Alright, you bunch of COPPA twats, cut the shit and listen up. This video is not made for kids, but for a general audience, meaning teens, adults, and seniors can also enjoy this video. With that in mind, please enjoy. And mostly bite me.
Welcome back, my ravishing rolling stock. Now, in the last volume, we've ended the 70s and 80s with the China Clay twins being praised as heroes. Now, in this volume, we shall cover the 90s and 2000s. So sit back, relax, and with that, please enjoy. In 1990, at the Arlesdale Railway, Frank becomes jealous that he didn't get to be in a book like the other miniature gauge engines back at 67, and rams into a beam in the shed in anger. He made up for his troubles by saving Rex's train after Rex's steam pipe was leaking. Bert was feeling sickly thanks to his tubes, and then on his return trip home, his coupling breaks and superglue was needed to fix it. During that time, a new engine in a yellow undercoat was built to work on the railway. Douglas named him Jock. His proven worth had led him to become cocky, especially after his attempt to move a lorry's trailer. Mike wanted to test Jock's strength by shutting off steam and letting Jock do all the work when they were double-heading a passenger train. But Mike would learn his lesson the hard way as his injector failed. Thankfully, the train makes it back and Mike apologizes for his trick to Jock, and Jock accepts his apology and makes his apology as well about his behavior for exchange. This would be the year Jock the New Engine would be written. This would also be the year where some Season 3 episodes air. Henry's Forest, A Joke Too Far, Thomas, Percy, and the Dragon. The Kirk Ronan branch line would have an extension from the cement works to the Maritime Museum. The diesel works was now open for business for the diesels on Sodor, and visiting diesels from the mainland. Two of the visiting diesels happened to be a Bagnall 040 hydraulic diesel named Dart, and later a 4DH Sentinel diesel hydraulic named Den. The two diesels were fascinated with the look of the diesel works, and the two were trialed with arranging rolling stock and parts. They were deemed worthy and were officially purchased by the company to work as industrial engines of the diesel works. In 1991, a railway show was set in York, and Thomas was chosen to attend, much to the bigger engine's disappointment. Thomas heads off to the mainland under his own power, and later a lorry after an accident at the crossing. Things went swimmingly after Thomas's buffer beam was fixed, and he met other engines at the Railway Museum. Aside of scaring a child from wheeshing steam, the railway show went okay. Green Arrow was pulling a rail tour train when more and more coaches were added, and Thomas was allowed to double-head the train with him. A bent rail was spotted by the riverbank from erosion, and Thomas warns Green Arrow to stop. Buses took the rail tourists home, while Thomas and Green Arrow had to travel on the other track to head back to York. Sir Stephen Topham Hatt came to visit York a few days later and was proud of Thomas. The museum director presented Thomas with a plaque that made him an honorary member of the National Railway Museum. This would be the year Thomas and the Great Railway Show would be written. In 1992, back on Thomas's branch line, Daisy would get stuck in a snowdrift, Percy would escape the collapse of Hackenbeck Bridge, Toby would haul 48 trucks to Ellsbridge, and Daisy would encounter George and have an accident at the crossing when a cone blew onto the line and jammed her brakes when she ran over it. Luckily, her fitter was swift, and Daisy arrived at Ellsbridge just in time to see Thomas return. This would be the year Thomas Comes Home would be written. A couple more Season 3 episodes would occur during this year. All at Sea and Thomas and Percy's Christmas Adventure. In 1993, a new batch of coal was imported from the mainland, but gave the engines indigestion in their fireboxes. Henry took it the worst when the rim of his smokebox door was slightly bent from the heat. His crew had to use paper mache to seal the gap for a short time. He was in need of an overhaul, so Henry doubleheads the express with James until they reached Crovan's Gate, but breaks one of his tires along the way. So he was placed in a siding until another engine came to haul him the rest of the way. During Henry's time at the works, engines had to take turns taking the flying kipper. But when it was James's turn, his wheels slipped from slippery scales from an accident from a forklift. By the time Henry's overhaul was nearly complete, the workman finished his red undercoat. They were about to put on his green livery when an engine was needed to haul the express. Even though he was still in his undercoat, it was all up to Henry. He brought the train to Barrow-in-Furness, and Sir Stephen Topham Hatt was most pleased and rewarded Henry with his proper green paint. This would be the year Henry and the Express would be written. Uranium was discovered in the lead mines of the Farquhar branch line, resulting a reopening for business. The Farquhar trio, Thomas, Percy, and Toby, gave away their 3 berths on their branch line to make room for some extra rolling stock. All 3 were transferred to rest at Tidmouth Sheds. In 1994, the Scottish twins would feel rushed off their wheels when working on the Little Western, so Stephen Topham Hatt would borrow an austerity tank engine from the Dean Railway, Wilbert, named after the author, to work at the line, but was temporarily transferred to the Farquhar branch after Percy's accident with porridge. Wilbert would tell an event of an engine number 16 to Thomas and Toby. He would end up with milk in his boiler at Ellsbridge's dairy, and then to work on the Little Western like planned earlier. But when Wilbur was about to depart with a train of ballast, a coupling gear from the first truck snapped. But thanks to Bert and some quick thinking with some wire, Wilbert's driver bought some coiled wire and used it as temporary couplings to take the train to its destination. When it was time for Wilbert to head home, Sir Stephen Topham Hatt considers on buying an austerity tank engine like Wilbert to work on his railway. But whether or not it'll happen is likely unknown. This will be the year Wilbert the Forest Engine would be written. The line from Ballyhood to Normanby would be released from the Beechings Railway Acts and reopened for service. In 1995, it was the railway's series' 50th anniversary. Much to Gordon's jealousy, Pip and Emma were chosen to pull the Golden Jubilee. As he pulled the express, he struck a crow by accident as it hit his front brake pipe. Meanwhile, Edward makes up for lost time as James was late. Edward mentions his front pony truck feeling wobbly on one of its wheels, only for him to lose it in a cabbage field. On the line before Drya on the Farquhar branch line, the line was being burrowed by rabbits, and a 10-mile-per-hour speed limit was placed to warn engines. Before the line's closure, Thomas derailed from sagging tracks from one of the burrows. Percy was called to re-rail Thomas and haul him to Knapford, and the line was repaired in time. As the celebration day came, Henry considered that the anniversary would be a flop. After Edward's wheel was fitted back on, He was selected to clear the line for Pip and Emma. Just as he and the Farquhar branch line engines were about to depart, a signal box fails from cobwebs. The engines were flagged through instead, and the ceremony commenced. The guest of honor was none other than the Prince of Wales at the time, Prince Charles, dedicating Stephen Topham Hatt and his engines as a credit to the Northwestern Railway. This would be the year Thomas and the Fat Controller's engines would be written. On the Coldefell Railway, 3 railway cars numbered 24 to 26 had arrived. In 1996, Peter Sam was invited on the Tallochflin Railway as a special guest. During his time, he took some awful-tasting white water, so bad that it squirted from his funnel. It was revealed that too much of the powder that makes the water taste good for the engines was added to the tower. But while Peter Sam was spending time in Wales, more and more visitors were on the Skarloey Railway, and Rennius had coaches full of them. He tries to puff over a gradient, only for the rails to be slippery from Rusty's weed killer train. During the locomotive shortage, Peter Sam returns to the Skarloey Railway early. Sir Handel becomes envious and breaks his fire bars intentionally so Peter Sam can do his work. At first, Sir Handel was delighted that his plan worked, but with no one interacting with him, he regrets his choice and apologizes to Mr. Rogers Sam. Kathy and Lizzie, 2 girls from Wales, were polishing Peter Sam while he talked about his time on the Tallochflin Railway. Word was starting to spread out about a new, unnamed engine in the works who is nearly complete. The engines wondered who the engine would be named until the ceremony came. Aside from a sow and her piglets being strayed on the line, Skarloey pulled the train into Crovan's Gate, and the new engine's name was revealed. Ivo Hugh, named after the now retired chief engineer in his honor. Ivo Hugh becomes the current number 7 of the Skarloey Railway. This would be the year new little engine would be written. On the Northwestern Railway, a new branch line was built leading from Bluffs Cove to the town of Ulfstead, connecting the Little Western branch line and the Farquhar branch line. It was for Toby. The Kirk Ronan extension would finish its construction and be opened for service. In 1997, Wilbert Awdry would sadly pass away peacefully in his sleep on the 21st of March. Sir Charles Topham Hatt would also pass away, and Stephen gains the Sir part of his name from the Topham family, now referred to as Sir Stephen Topham Hatt. British Rail had ended its operations while the Northwestern region presumably privatized and reverting back to being a railway. A hot air balloon race was happening, and James wanted to watch despite having work. Suddenly, as James was hauling a train, a balloon landed right in front of him. The crew wrapped up the balloon and placed it in one of the vans, and James took the balloonist to the finish area just in time to watch the other balloons land. Later on, a hot air balloon was taking tourists around the island, much to Thomas and James's concern, with the idea of being replaced by balloons. But that wouldn't be the case, thanks to Sir Topham Hatt relieving James. Toad would be reunited with Oliver as his brake van, and on the Skarloey Railway, another diesel from the National Coal Board would be re-gauged to work on the Skarloey Railway as the number 10, named the SSQ, short for Skarloey Slate Quarry. In 1998, the events from Season 5 occurred, with the extension of Brendam Docks with the assistance of a new tower crane named Cranky. as well as a new hodgepodge heavy-duty digging machine named Thumper, a British Railways Class 27 Paxman diesel named Derrick, and the restoration of a Great Western Railway luxury coach named Old Slow Coach, who would later be named Susanna in 2018. Toby's branch line would be complete, and during his operation, he would discover an England-class engine who worked on the Mid-Sodor Railway named Bertram. Oliver would find the old mansion branch line, and it too would be released from Beech's axing and reopened for service. 2 gypsy locomotives named Bash and Dash from California were transferred to the mainland since the St. Humblent State Park could only afford to handle 1 gypsy locomotive to maintain. But because of their wild behavior on the mainland with shunting, they were sent to an island engulfed in mist at the south of Brendam to run their own railway that started construction at the time. Ferdinand, a Class Climax C locomotive from Pennsylvania that recently moved to California, would eventually tag along 3 years later in 2001. In 1999, production of Sodor's very first feature film was in full swing, titled Thomas and the Magic Railroad. At this time, Edward and Sir Stephen Topham Hatt were on holiday, and a new British Railways Warship Class 42 was visiting Sodor. He doesn't really have a name, he was just simply called Diesel 10, and unlike the other Class 42s, he was installed with a mechanical claw that sat on his roof that he would nickname Pinchy. This modification not only broke the loading gauge rules, but it also was an illegal modification. Regardless, Diesel 10 was allowed to be in the film portrayed as the villain, and Britt Allcroft with her new character and life-size prop engine named Lady. After filming was complete, Diesel 10 left the island, wondering where he would go until Edward convinced him to return to Sodor. Another big fire was set ablaze at Crovan's Gate, trapping all the engines within the works. But Diesel 10 charged in and saved all that was trapped, but couldn't save himself from the explosion. Entering the 21st century in 2000, the Thomas and the Magic Railroad movie would be released, but ended as a flop. During the movie's release, Diesel 10 would wake up from his coma and be accepted to work on the Northwestern Railway, even with his claw intact on him. Upon hearing his heroic actions, Railway Boarders and Her Majesty has pardoned him and allowed him to use his claw. With the Crovan's Gate works destroyed, engines would have to be fixed at numerous repair yards should they ever break down. In 2001, Ivo Hugh was in need of an overhaul, but because of Crovan's Gate works being ravaged from the explosion, he had to get the repairs done on the mainland. All 3 of the electric engines on the Peel-Godred line had retired, leaving bare the works diesel and occasional steam engines to run the Peel-Godred line. While on the topic of Peel-Godred, one of the Coldy Fell Railway's rail cars, number 24, would have trouble with a finicky speed control mechanism and would later on be taken out of service. Ferdinand would be sent to the mainland to be put on trial to pull trains, but he too would do his work a little too fast and wild, with his load ending up being jittered. So he too went to Misty Island with the 2 gypsy twins and helped them build a lumber railway on Misty Island. They would help with the wooden railway toy line with their supply of wood chopped down from some of the trees. In 2002, events from Season 6 occurred, minus James and the Red Balloon back at 97, and for Percy's coal tipper accident, Sir Topham Hatt would have a word with Henry, not Percy. A new Sodor slate quarry would be opened for operation, and the arrival of a Class 07 named Salty would help with its excavation. He wasn't very fond of the quarry, but was later retransferred to the docks, where he was much happier. Another engine was on trial, an engine with its crane mounted on its boiler called Harvey. He too would become a resident of Sodor. A new member of the construction crew would also arrive, an international 454 front loader named Jack, who would be the number 11. He would work alongside with Alfie, a 1960 K1C10 and K excavator number 12, Oliver, a unique shaped excavator number 14, Maximilian, or Max for short, a 1949 Scambell dump truck number 15, Kelly, a 1942 Austin K6 lorry number 17, Ned, a 1916 Erie Type B steam shovel number 19, Byron, an American bulldozer from the 30s number 20, and Isabella, a Sentinel DG4 steam lorry number 22. In 2003, events from Season 7 occurred, minus the old bridge back at 1869, and all the episodes with the Skarloey Railway engines centered. The controller is Mr. Roger Sam, not Sir Topham Hatt. With the exception of the arrival of a GNR Sterling class named Emily, the Blue Circle's brother named Fergus, another LMS Ivet Class 2MT tank engine named Arthur, and a standard 9F named Murdoch. We'll also get introduced to a visiting engine, an LNER A4 named Spencer, who was the private engine of the Duke and Duchess of Boxford. Bulgy would be restored to road service after 34 years of being a hen house and would serve as a vegetable mobile stand for the next 6 years. And Diesel would learn about the disappearances of most of his siblings and promises to work well on Sodor. During this year, a large airport would be in construction on the mainline loop. The Elfstead branch line would tie up its loose end and reach up to the High Farm. On the Skarloey Railway, Duke would need an overhaul and spend time with his remaining siblings on the Festiniog Railway. On the Coldefell Railway, railcars 25 and 26 would suffer a similar failure and withdrawals as number 24. All three railcars were sent back to the mainland only to meet their grim fate 7 years later. In 2004, events from Season 8 occurred. A new junction station was built called Kelstrop Road. On the mainland in Wales, Ivo Hugh's overhaul would be complete, but he would stay on the Tallochflint Railway as a spare engine for the time being. This would also be the year where Mr. Roger Sam retires as controller of the Skarloey Railway and would pass his role to a close friend of his, Mr. Peregrine Percival. In 2005, the island of Sodor would celebrate 60 years of the railway series. The airport would nearly be completely built, but a vast hurricane called Tyrannus Ventus would ravage the island. All the engines, whether steam or diesel, worked together to clean up the mess and finish the airport in time for the arrival of the holidaymakers. This would also be the year where Season 9 takes place, as well as some new faces on the Northwestern Railway. A Great Eastern Railway D56 named Molly, a Southern Railway Q1 class named Neville, a replica of British Railway's 11001 diesel shunter named Dennis, and on the Skarloey Railway, they too will have a new engine. A double Fairley engine named Mighty Mac, A new steamworks was in the works to replace the damaged former Crovan's Gate Works, and a new coal mine on the Glennock branch line was dug up for the village at the Lakeside Ulfstead line to warm up for the winter. During this year, Duncan would visit the Tallochflin Railway and give tours for a little while until returning. In 2006, events from Season 10 occur. Although, in the story Edward strikes out, it would be slightly altered and not have Edward's character be betrayed wrong. New faces would come to the Northwestern Railway, a Southern Railway USA Class tank engine named Rosie, and a Ranson's and Rapier 45-ton steam crane named Rocky. On the Skarloey Railway, a wharf would be in operation as an interchange for both the Northwestern and Skarloey Railways. Mr. Percival would restore and purchase Freddie to work on the Skarloey Railway and be the number 7, with the lack of Ivo Hugh being on the mainland. And the Sodor Airport would have a BAC 111 jet named Jeremy. We'll also get introduced to new members of the construction crew. Nelson, a Scammell 15 LA ballast tractor and 1927 Scammell Pioneer tractor unit hybrid, number 10. Montgomery, or Monty for short, number 16. Patrick, a 1943 Mack NM3 converted into a cement mixer, number 23. And Buster, an Aveling and Porter R10 steamroller class. In 2007, Bertie the bus was out of commission, so Henrietta had to carry the workmen to the quarry as well as her passengers, with some of them standing on her balcony. This caught the attention of the constable and forbids that to ever happen again. Near Elsbridge, Thomas spots an old coach on the garden. So Sir Stephen Topham Hatt decides to restore the coach, named Victoria from the Furness Railway, to her former glory. At the repair yard near the construction of the steamworks, Edward and Victoria would talk about their time on the Furness Railway, including Albert being caught in the avalanche back at 13. Daisy would have a frightening encounter with grass snakes, resulting in her fuse being blown, and Victoria's restoration would be complete for Edward to take to Knapford. She's hitched up to Thomas's train, and they make their way to Farquhar. After a dangerous approach with Terrence's trailer on the verge of falling off the tracks, the train safely made it to the top station where Victoria was hitched up to Toby's train, now known as Toby's vintage train to this day. This would be the year Thomas and Victoria would be written. This would also be the year where Season 11 occurred, though Peter Sam would be the one to have brontophobia, not Skarloey. New faces on the Northwestern Railway would arrive, including Aerolite's brother, named Whiff, a Manning Wardle L class named Billy, and an ICI hopper wagon labeled as a heavily engineered coal truck on rails, or Hector for short. On the Skarloey Railway, a 1964 Scammell Scarab 6-ton tractor lorry named Madge was bought to help alongside the railway. In 2008, Thomas would be taking a train from the wharf when he would stumble upon old tracks that led to the old town of Great Waterton that was abandoned during World War II. Sir Stephen Topham Hatt was most impressed and whipped up operations to restore the town. And he would also purchase a new silver tank engine to help, a Stewart and Lloyd 16060 ST named Stanley. This would be the year where Season 12 occurred, except in Push Me Pull You, it was with Sir Handel and Peter Sam. This would be the final season to use models to film the events of Sodor, and Season 12 would also be the dawn of a new type of filming called computer graphic imagery, or CGI for short. There were new arrivals on Sodor, that being a Pennsylvania Railroad Cade 4 class named Hank, though his visit would be short-lived due to him breaking the British loading gauge, so he was sent back to the U.S. and resized for the Northwestern Railway after the episode Heave-Ho Thomas. A Mosley Road Kitson tram named Flora would run the Sodor Tramway from Great Waterton to Vickerstown. And a steam crane named Colin would be built earlier this year to work at the wharf. This year would also be a little somber due to the passing of the season 1-7 director Dave Milton on the 16th of May, and the comedian and U.S. narrator George Carlin on the 22nd of June. On the Skarloey Railway, the slate quarry would go out of business due to the lack of slate being excavated. The Ministry of Defense would see an opportunity to buy the slate quarry and use it as an ammunition dump. The land was bought, and they would also have their own engine to shunt around the area. Although we've never seen the Ministry of Defense engine, it would be described as a shade of black, runs on electricity, and is beetle-shaped. The steamworks was now complete and opened for service. Victor, a narrow-gauge saddle tank engine from Cuba, will resign at the works, being the first engine to be repaired after an unloading accident at Brendam Docks where Luke, a Kerr Stewart Warren, believes he was at fault. So he went into hiding after he was repaired. A Ransom's and Rapier 6-ton crane named Kevin would also be purchased to run the steamworks and help Victor out moving parts and pieces about. On the mainland, a new LNER Peppercorn A1 was built and entered service. Her name is Tornado. In 2009, the Duke and Duchess's summer house would be in need of restoration. And during the restoration, an engine was secretly being restored to working order as well. That being Hero, after Thomas discovered him. Sir Stephen Topham Hatt was eventually informed from Thomas about Hero's restoration, and accepts Hero's restoration to be held at the Sodor Steamworks properly. After his restoration, Hero will return to Japan, but later come back to help deliver goods from the mainland to Sodor, and vice versa. This would be the year Season 13 would take place. In addition, the series would become fully CGI animated. A new tank engine would work on Sodor, that being Billy's brother, named Charlie. Mighty Mac and Freddy would leave Sodor to run on the Festiniog Railway with their siblings. Along the Lakeside Ulfstead line on the Skarloey Railway, a new source of stone and slate with a blue hue would be found nearby the mountain Shane Dweeney. Tracks were laid there immediately, and that's when Luke would be privately owned at the company called the Blue Mountain Quarry. It was then when Luke explains his accident at Brendam Docks the previous year to the other engines, and they vow to keep it dark. This is where we would conclude our 6th volume of the Tales of the Northwestern Rails timeline. Join us next month for our 7th and final volume, where we cover the 2010s and 2020s.